Hello, this is Nick here from Gorgon Reviews. Today I'm talking with Annapurna, the director, writer, and star of Fucktoys. In Fucktoys, Annapurna finds out that she has been cursed and needs to raise $1,000 to cure herself with the help of some psychics. Annapurna, thankfully, is a sex worker who is pretty open, who AP is, about different experiences and generally knows how to make money, so she goes on an odyssey to get that money. So thank you for spending time here today.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Uh, Starting question for you. What's the
Mhm.
first movie you remember seeing in theaters?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I don't remember. I remember going to the theater, but I don't actually know if I think it could have been. I remember a bunch of movies from my childhood. I remember seeing Lord of the Rings in theaters. I remember seeing The Royal Tenenbaums in theaters, Zoolander. But I'm sure I saw movies before then in
Mhm.
theaters, like when I was a kid, but they don't like stand out to me as like
Mhm.
those movies do from being a kid.
I actually always try to look up the age too. We're only like 2 weeks apart difference. So,
Really? Are you an Aries?
yes, late
Oh my
March.
gosh, happy birthday.
I remember definitely seeing a lot of those in theaters as well.
So we're both 28. That's crazy.
Yeah. Um, all right. So you've been in the acting business for a few years now. You've been in shorts, movies, TV shows. When did you first get that acting buzz and decide to pursue it?
Um, when I was a kid, I really struggled in school and I did like a theater program, like an after school theater thing when I was in fourth grade. And then in middle school, I wanted to do acting, and my mom basically was like, if you want to do it, you have to figure it out yourself. And so I actually got my first agent when I was in seventh grade, all by myself in Nashville, Tennessee. And I did a number of like music videos, but then these like Christian, like educational episodic videos. And then I went to a performing arts high school in Nashville and I did theater. And then when I went to college, I went to acting conservatory and I trained at the Rutgers Mason Gross School of the Arts in their acting conservatory. And we studied in London. And I did a lot of off-Broadway work in New York. I worked with Jesse Eisenberg off-Broadway and on the West End. I worked with Wallace Shawn. And so I think that storytelling and acting and honestly, I just really love the collaborative part of theater and of filmmaking where you get to be on set, you get to be in rehearsal, you get to just be with a bunch of people. It's like summer camp, and you get to have this fun, like communal experience. So that was sort of my where it came from. And it's just sort of was always this thing that I just was going to do. And I also used to make movies as a kid, like with my friends. And so it was always just something I wanted to do. I didn't know that film school existed when I was in high school. I didn't know that that was like an option. So I think for me, acting theater was like the only thing I really knew about. So that's kind of where it came from, and that's my backstory with it.
Yeah. Making movies as a kid, does that mean you ran in the woods and tried to do your own Blair Witch at all?
I never did Blair Witch. I didn't actually see. I did like these movies with my dog where she was like a detective, and my dad had one of those early Macs where it had like the first iMovie on it. So
Mm.
I was mainly just like shooting stuff on our camcorder and then just like editing on the Mac. And then like anytime we had a school project, I would like advocate that we shot something for it so that then I could like with like a really stupid long like intro section, like opening credit section to like music from like movies that I would just like put on. So, and that was also the era of like Napster. So it'd be like my brother would like download music off of Napster that I could like put in the movie. So, and then there'd just be these like long montages, which is still very similar to my style, I guess.
Of course, your brother downloaded the music, never you, right?
I didn't know how to use Napster at the time. He was more involved in that space. And he was like in ever, playing, he was gaming and he was more on the internet. I wasn't really so much on the internet. I was like Sims and iMovie.
Yeah. Was there ever a alternate timeline where you might have been a country star instead?
That's actually my next movie is my coal miner's daughter meets Oh Brother Where Art Thou meets, Jim Jarmusch's Down by Law. So yes, there was an alternate timeline. Going to a performing arts high school in Nashville, Tennessee, it's like everyone is a musician, everyone is the kid of a musician or a music person. And so theater was more the like safe option because no one was in theater. It was just like the kids that didn't want to go to their regular high school who wanted to go to the performing arts high school would all be in the theater class. And so, yeah, maybe in the future.
So you're obviously the star of Fucktoys and the writer and director. So this is your first feature film to write and direct. When did you decide to jump into these fields?
So, I think being an actor in New York, I felt really stifled and I felt really unsatisfied with not only the material that I was reading, but the opportunities that, were available to me. I think that the industry had a hard time casting me in a way that was just like getting to be a girl. I was typecast a lot into quote unquote ethnic roles or ethnically ambiguous or just straight up like different uh, nationalities than I was. And I felt like that was holding me back in a lot of ways from getting to just explore characters that I wanted to play. So I started writing it kind of out of that frustration as an actor and with what was out there for me. And I wanted to write something that I could give a lot of other actors the same opportunity that I wanted. So that's kind of why this movie has so many actors in it. And I tried to give them all really big, larger than life characters so that all of these people that were like these great New York City theater actors could really show their stuff and have this opportunity to flex and sort of show kind of more to who they were as actors. And so the writing part of it, that was where that came from. I wasn't actually intending to direct my film. I wanted to find a director. I didn't think I could direct because I didn't go to film school and I had such a hard time in high school as a student that I felt really I've had a lot of imposter syndrome with myself. So it wasn't until I found Tim and he came on as my producer that he was like, you're a director and you have all these ideas in your head. You really could do this. That I sort of came around to the idea of doing it. And then we spent a long time, this film has taken me 8 years. So we had a lot of time in the, raising financing and prepping the movie for me to really plan the movie and figure out exactly how I wanted it to look, exactly how I wanted to shoot it, how I wanted to stage it, how the color palette, the look, the aesthetic, the references. So I had a long time to really synthesize my vision and I think gain confidence as a director so that when I got on set, I really knew what I wanted and I knew how to execute it.
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
So when I first started watching, I just assumed it was like set in the real world and normal. But then what really made me realize it's not really the real world. It's definitely a different just entity. Was when cops early on busted a like I guess brothel earlier in the film, and they
A
looked
trap
like
house. It's a
strippers.
Peter Pan house. It's a house for lost boys.
Uh, and the cops looked like strippers pretending to be cops, but then they were actually arresting people, and I was like, oh, they're also cops. They're just
Yeah,
dressed
the
like.
cops are inspired by Tom of Finland, leather, fetish leather daddy,
Mm.
basically look. And Tom of Finland is like a notorious fetish artist who draws cops and like men of authority in these like hyper sexualized ways. So I thought it would be fun that in this like world of like camp and transaction and fetish, if even the cops, like you're saying, are they themselves eroticized and fetishized, and they're fun, in a very like cruising Tom of Finland homage.
So what gave you the inspiration for the world of Trashtown, I guess, overall?
Yeah, I think that the world of Trashtown is definitely this amalgamation of, where I grew up in the South and in the 90s
Mhm.
and this sort of yesteryear, this kind of Americana that is a nostalgic but also neglected small town America where there was once industry and it's abandoned and overgrown. There's refineries, there's this sort of pastel monochromatic diner donut shop, you know, beauty to the world, but it's also sort of masked in this like layer of like filth and grime and sort of like just forgotten. And I, am very much inspired by filmmakers like Derek Jarmaine and Greg Araki and Ken Russell and obviously John Waters as one of them, and also Agnes Varga. And I wanted the world to feel like this heightened theatrical landscape where we're embracing this sort of filth and trash, but in this very Pee-wee's Big Adventure, in this very fun, whimsical, feminine way. And so that's sort of where the world of Trash Town came from, was this like, what if I could have like a world like Springfield from The Simpsons, like this sort of cartoon reality, but it's in this like real beautiful, French New Wave style. And that was sort of the like where it came from. The movie is really this like homage love letter to like all of the filmmakers that I grew up with and that I love, and just these worlds that felt so beautiful and like nostalgic and feminine and whimsical, but were also themselves like kind of real and kind of like inspired from like memory and childhood.
Awesome. So Sadie Scott played Danny, the supporting main character of the film. How did they get involved in the project, and how was their character made?
So the character of Danny was actually based off of a real guy that I was dating at the time when I wrote it. And it didn't really work out between us. And so when I was casting the film, originally it was a guy character and a guy actor was going to play the role. But, the movie really explores class and it explores marginalized people and my character being a woman. It's really about like the experience of being a woman in the world and dealing with exploitation and fetishization. And I felt like having a guy in that role wouldn't really land the experience of being marginalized in the same way that I wanted it to. So I asked my casting directors to actually look for female actors. I also felt like as a actor, I was like, if I was a girl and I got this, audition, I would just flip my shit. I would think this was the coolest opportunity. So um, Sadie actually auditioned, and I knew Sadie as an actor because they were in theater at the same theater company that I worked with. And when they auditioned, they actually came out to me as non-binary, and I just really loved their take on the character. I loved just their presence and their innocence that they brought to it, because the character needed to have this balance of punk chaos with purity.
Mhm.
And they really had that sort of boyish, immature, but yet kind of beautiful innocence to the character. And so I cast them as the role, and it was the first time they got to really play a part that really allowed them to express their gender, how they felt themselves to be. And I was just like amazing. I was like, whatever you want to bring to the character, you can bring. So, and I kind of gave that mandate to all of my actors, whatever you want, however you want this person to look, you tell me and we'll do that. And so they wanted to bind their chest, and I was like, go for it. That's a great addition to the character. I wanted them to shave their head and have this like punk, very 80s reminiscent of like London 80s like skinhead look with bleached blonde hair, and they were game. And so we really created their character together. And it wasn't really until the film came out that I realized just how special this role is, not only to Sadie, but to all of the young queer people, all of the young trans people, because they get to see a movie where the heartthrob love interest character is this trans, young River Phoenix looking sexy punk person that is non-binary and trans and not just a white boy like a young Matt Dillon or Johnny Depp from like Cry Baby. So I think it provides this like it provides this story where a lot of people can see themselves and can see like what they're attracted to in narrative. And I think that's really beautiful and really powerful for a lot of people who don't get to see themselves represented.
Mhm. Final question. What, of course, do you hope the audiences get out of this movie when they get to see it in theaters?
That's a great question. I really think that this film for me is about what it's like to be a woman and what it's like to be marginalized in late stage capitalism. And, I think that, I don't think of these characters as victims, but I do think that the world that they're existing in is the curse that they're fighting. And it's not a magical thing. It's actually the structures of oppression and the structures of capitalism that they're fighting against and that everyone's fighting against, and that really they're all in it together. And that in this like search for basically individualism, we've lost this ability to actually hold on to the ones that we really love. And so my hope is that people are able to enjoy the ride and enjoy the adventure and fall in love with these characters. And even if they themselves are not identifying with the people directly, are able to love and identify with these people as people, and maybe break barriers that could hold people back from loving a trans person or loving a brown person who's a sex worker, and seeing them as people and as sentimental sentient beings is my hope. And loving and having a great time and laughing and enjoying the comedy of it.
Well, thank you so much for spending your time answering some questions about your film Fucktoys. It'll be playing at the Seattle International Film Festival on Friday, May 16th and Saturday, May 17th. And Annapurna is set to attend and probably answer questions of the audience after the fact. And apparently, if you go, you get a chance to win tickets to the Queer and Trans Film Festival later in July in Seattle as well, which I don't know, maybe
Hey,
just
I
a
didn't
random
even know
pick.
about that. That's
Yeah.
great.
So a bonus reason to go and see it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Nick, and such good questions.